I Am the Long Lost Sister by Mary V. Photos by Mary V. The first time I ventured beyond the corner drugstore, I rode a brand new bicycle, a blue two-wheeler big enough for me to grow into. At 7, I'd mastered the beast, standing most of the time and flopping side to side as the pedals reached the bottom. Dad and Mom hired Mrs. I Always Wished I Had a Daughter as our nanny for the summer months, while their career jobs took them to the city. Nanny brought my big sister and me pink frilly dresses and filled long hours with proper lady instruction. Scout, Ramona Quimbley, and Gina B. Jones would have understood my frustration. The day I mastered the overgrown new bicycle, I stuffed jeans, a t-shirt, and my old mud-stomping shoes into a backpack and waited for Nanny to make the tea sandwiches. Who put tea in sandwiches anyway? It tasted as nasty as it sounded. I was a second born, precocious as the day was long, according to my mom. She said my tree-climbing affinity for bugs and exploring farther than she liked was what inspired her and Dad to hire Nanny. Summer days had too much living ripe for the doing to sit around like a little lady, especially with a bossy sister who loved Nanny's glitz, glamour, and cucumber sandwiches. Long about her second month at the house, I discovered the secret of turning the back doorknob without a squeak. I also learned how to eke the door open without letting the hinges groan. None of this did any good until I figured out how to silently inch the screen door wide enough to squeeze me through, then gently tug them closed. In case others wanted to learn this skill, I recommended practicing lifting the cookie jar lid. Nanny caught me the first 100 times or so and made me put the cookies back. On the 10th day in a row, a cookie touched my lips and disappeared without a word from Nanny. I considered it a miracle from the good Lord, who understood kids like me and tried the back door knob. I swung the backpack over my shoulder and sneaked into the garage. Faster than Spider-Man slipped into a hero costume, I changed into practical clothes, leaving the frilly pink dress, white ruffled socks, and patent leather shoes under a tarp. A lean-to attached to the back of the garage sheltered my new bicycle from weather and Nanny's sight. I pushed it through the broken wood fence board and out to the alley, tasting sweet freedom that spurred me on past the corner drugstore onto the country dirt road headed north out of town. I could have walked down to the river again or skidded my feet through leaves in the woods to pass the day, but I'd done all that before by my lonesome. What I really wanted was to play with other kids. Kids who liked to do the same thing as me. Kids not afeard to get dirty or pick up an injured bird and nurse it back to health. The girls in my neighborhood played with dolls and dressed up. They washed their hands and kept their hair brushed. Who had time for all that? I pedaled faster on the country dirt road, squeezing the handlebars and forcing them to hold steady. To my left and right, farmland stretched as far as I could see, huge fields of hay and corn. I kept riding on the lookout for a farmhouse. Any farmer with all this land must have a passel of kids. A powerful thirst scratched at my throat about the time a big old farmhouse rose from the ground like a white daisy. The center part was yellow. Additions poked out every which way were painted white. This house could be the best hide-and-seek home ever built. In the front yard, 12 bicycles lay on the side, taking an afternoon siesta. There weren't no kids playing inside or hearing range anywheres. I squeezed the brakes and hopped off, running with my bike until she came to a stop and laid her down to rest with the other bikes. One of Nanny's lessons said a proper young lady should never walk up to a stranger's house and knock, except there had to be a passel of kids living here who treated bikes kindly by letting them sleep rather than forcing them to stand in a storage place. There had to be. I don't mind saying my legs trembled and begged me not to cross the wraparound porch to the front screen door. I ignored them, raised my hand, and knocked. A kindly lady, a bit older than my mom, came to the door. "Well, hello there. Can I help you?" I steadied my nerves. 'Tweren't no reason to be shy to such a nice lady. "Yes, ma'am. I live in town." I pointed. "I'm looking for friends who might want to play." She opened the screen door and stepped outside. "You look like Adelaide Porter." "She's my mom." Adelaide was a dear friend of mine. We used to sit and make quilts together. Land sakes, I haven't seen her in a long time. How is she? Working her fingers to the bone in her city career job. Oh, I see. And you're summertime board. Yes, ma'am. She and Dad hired a nanny who teaches proper decorum, or something like that. The kindly lady laughed. Don't you be at all, child. Well, as it happens, I have 12 children who love to play when their chores are done. Are you hungry? I can pull up a chair. I sniffed the air. Fresh buttermilk biscuits, sausages. That's all the more smell my nose needed to tell my brain to say yes. Yes, ma'am. Come inside. You can call me Aunt Gertie. My husband, he's the farmer sitting at the head of the table, is Uncle George. An oak table stretched across the kitchen into the hall with chairs squashed together. She sat me down in the middle of her tribe and introduced me as Adelaide Porter's young'un. They welcomed me like a long-lost sister, filling my plate with food and pouring milk into my glass. Fresh milk taken from the cow that morning, not a jug of bought at the store. I mostly listened and watched Uncle George and Aunt Gertie's family talk, and somehow listened at the same time. I quickly learned this was a storytelling, fun-loving, hard-working family. Apparently for years, nigh unto a bushelful, Aunt Gertie and Uncle George told generations' worth of slap-your-knee funny stories during the Family Fun Friday hog-tie night gatherings. Once in a while, they threw in a sprinkling of serious tales. In all the years they'd done this, not a one were writ for posterity. To me, after hearing a few stories at the lunch table, the loss were more serious than a writer without words. Why, it were stories without ink and paper. And so I drew the short straw. I would become the Laurel Ingalls Wilder, the Jo March, the Anne of Green Gables for Uncle George and Aunt Gertie's family stories, for all to read. This has been Mary V. reading I Am the Long Lost Sister.